All right, everyone, I'll kick us off. Sorry for that little freeze, but welcome, everyone, and thank you so much for joining. I will introduce myself really quickly. My name is Jordan Wagman, and I am the marketing manager here at Trafera. So very thrilled to be moderating this exciting panel today. This is the final event of our Techies Heck Fest week. We've had just an awesome week, so very excited to make it to Friday and this final event. It's been very exciting, like you can tell. So lots of ideas, lots of inspiration that I've even found throughout this week. And today we're wrapping it up with what I think could be potentially one of the more valuable parts from a conversation with our own Trafera experts. Today's panel is all about perspective. We brought on, as you can see, a lot of people within Trafera that each have a unique area of specialization, kind of an area that they're knowledgeable about. And they're going to share some insights on where technology is headed, how organizations are having conversations about technology, how you can prepare, kind of a wide variety of topics today. We'll start by kicking it off to Anna, who will introduce herself and share her insight.
Well, great. So excited to be able to go first. Hi, everybody. I'm Anna Hanrahan, and I am a teaching and learning consultant with Trafera. I'm on Josh's team. We have a fabulous team of educators, former educators. All of us spent about 20 years in the classroom, so we've been through it in the trenches. And I am a Google for Education certified trainer, and my focus lately has been on all things AI. And I have been just really eyeball deep in everything AI and going to conferences and going into schools and working with teachers and meeting them where they are with that. And, you know, we're right at about 3 years now since ChatGPT joined us, and that was such an exciting time. And it's really just kind of unreal how much has happened in that space time. You know, at first there was so much excitement and confusion and fear. As they do, students latched onto this. They found the opportunities of AI and the potential of it pretty quick. And that created, you know, a lot of fear in our schools. And it seems like it took overall, not sweeping, but in general, a lot of time for the teachers to cautiously approach AI. And I think we're finally getting at the point where teachers are starting to embrace it and really understand how powerful it can be in helping with their teaching, just in general, with streamlining things and the effectiveness and helping them with lesson planning. But while that's been happening, there's been a lot going on with students. You know, some schools were just completely outlawing AI, trying to do that. They were, you know, trying to put up some really strict parameters. And I think we're finally getting to the point where we can, in the schools, work with our students and, you know, help shape and guide AI and what that looks like for good, responsible use with students. You know, it was the Wild West there for a while, but now I think we're coming back and feeling comfortable of, you know, helping them see what that looks like. So I've been having a lot of conversations about student AI literacy and what that looks like in the classroom, how students can be using AI not just to be copying and pasting and cheating and putting that content in and passing it off as their own. Obviously, that's not okay. But using it and showing them what it looks like to use it to brainstorm and use it as a thought partner while they're generating ideas and maybe researching different perspectives of a topic. Using it for tutoring and personalized learning to help explain different concepts, to review and to understand content to kind of bring it to whatever level they're at. Also using it for feedback for their own writing, you know, pointing out areas that might be weak in their argument, suggesting resources for research and even for multimedia creation. I mean, there's just incredible things now, like Notebook LM can create these audio overview podcasts to really synthesize all that information and relay it to in a way that makes them, you know, makes it easier for them to understand and click. So talking about these positive, beneficial uses with students and what that looks like, and then talking about conversely, you know, what's not appropriate is a big conversation I'm seeing in schools right now. And, you know, I think ultimately teachers need to be empowered to set their own rules for AI use, but they need to have an understanding of what that looks like and how they can help guide their students. So that's just something I'm seeing out there and having a lot of really good, interesting conversations on lately.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that
Yeah.
insight, Anna. Okay, next up, we're going to hear from Ben.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Ben Shu. I'm a Microsoft Systems consultant with Trafera. My background has been in IT support for 10 plus years now, including supporting a K-12 public school environment. Currently, I specialize in Windows endpoint management, so things like Intune, Entra, Defender, that kind of stuff. With remote work and learning continuing to grow, cloud-managed devices are quickly becoming the norm. But I do still see in a lot of organizations, especially K-12, there's a lot of traditional on-prem devices like computer labs. The future trend that I'm seeing isn't so much about choosing between cloud or on-prem, but about creating the right hybrid balance that connects both of them. For mobile devices like staff and student laptops, that direction is very, very clear. Fully Enter ID joined, Intune managed, that's where a lot of those are going. They're going to use things like Windows Autopilot. You can get real-time compliance, cloud-based access controls, and none of that requires a VPN. They don't have to phone home, talk to the home network, any of that. They're flexible anywhere. For on-prem devices, the trend is less about moving to the cloud and more about cloud attachment rather than replacement. You might have something like SCCM already out set up on-prem. That's not going away. It's going to be connected to Intune or in a co-managed or cloud-attached setup. This would let you keep things like your existing processes for labs, for reimaging, that kind of stuff, while still getting unified visibility and reporting in Intune. It's one pane of glass for all of your devices, whether it's on-prem or in the cloud. That hybrid model also supports things like zero trust. So no device is automatically trusted just because it's inside the network. As devices now are moving between home and school, public Wi-Fi, each one has to prove it's secure and compliant before it gets access. So with that, cloud and on-prem hybrid setup, what you end up with is you have your cloud joined devices that are dynamic, they're moving around, but they can still be governed anywhere. And you have your on-prem devices that will also feed health and compliance data into Intune. And you can see that in one pane of glass. And that then also gets you things like consistent patching, security, and compliance checks, again, across all of your endpoints in the cloud, on-prem, if it's in a coffee shop in a different state, or it's a lab computer down the hall. For a lot of districts, I know budgets are a big thing. And with them being pretty tight right now, hybrid is a very, very smart evolution for those kinds of setups. You can still keep your investments that you spend a lot of time and money in setting up all of your SCCM, your on-prem stuff, and it still lets you advance towards a more modern cloud-based setup. So in my mind, it's not so much about, the future isn't so much about all cloud, all on-prem. It's not black and white. It's going to be about hybrid. Cloud join what makes sense, connect what you still need on-prem, and bring it all together under one cohesive management setup.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing that, Ben. All right, next up, we're going to have Colleen introduce herself and share her insight.
Hi, my name is Colleen Flannery, and I am the field CTO for Trafera for the West. Cover every state west of the Mississippi. So happy to be here. New to the team. Spent 28 years in public education, the last 17 in technology, and the past 5 years as the CTO for a large school district in Arizona, serving 44,000 students. Technology and education and public sector are my mission, and really happy to be here to support and happy to be part of this incredible team. When I look at technology and what's happened, AI seems to have disrupted, like it's something different, it kind of is aligned with like the internet. And I just like to go back to like 3 principles, one being super important, the third one. But the first is planning, is how do you think about technology strategically and not just solve problems, not just put out fires for today, but making decisions looking forward and being strategic. So planning's a really important part of today, and thinking about what are we seeing in the evolution. So we're not making decisions that are short-sighted and won't be able to support what we're seeing in technology. The second one is that it's people-driven, that sometimes we lose the humanness in tech. And I love things like this, that we're all coming together and we need to collaborate and talk about the effects on the humans. Anna did a great job on talking about students and teachers, that we need to look at that whole perspective when we're planning for technology, is that we are working with humans and there's a deeper integration than there ever has been. So we can't forget about the people part of technology. And the third, and I think the most important part in the recent few years in tech, is partnerships. How do we create these public-private partnerships that solve these really complex problems and come together to make sure that public sector K-12 schools are outfitted in a way that they can do the business? And without those partnerships, we won't be able to solve those complex problems. So when you're thinking about solving problems and working with your people and planning for the future, what partnerships do you have in place and what value do they bring you? Do they bring you a team that can help you and add to your already great areas of expertise? And just know that it's okay. The last 5 years as a CTO since COVID, it's grown. There's so many different areas that we have to cover. As a CTO, we need help. And how do you look at those partnerships to solve those problems and not feel like you have the weight of the world on your shoulder? So focus on those three areas: people, planning, and partnerships, and we'll come together and solve these complex problems.
Love that perspective. Thank you, Colleen. Okay, next up, we're going to hear from Corey.
Hello, everybody. Corey Kling, and I am the Director of Pre-Sales Engineering at Trafera. I've been here for a little over a year and a half now. Time flies, and it's been a great ride. Here at Trafera, the primary duties of my department is sitting between the sales team and the customer in terms of helping to engineer solutions that work for school districts. And so it's a mile wide and an inch deep, sometimes an inch and a half deep, our knowledge. So what I would like to, for me, I think the easy thing for all of us is to talk about these pie in the sky things, to talk about these amazing things that are going on in the world. I was just in Texas and learning about processing and GPU powers that are now we're talking about those in petabytes, and terabytes seem like a thing that wasn't even possible not that long ago. And so the wider point, I think the biggest takeaway overall for K-12, especially, but, state and local and even small business leaders right now, is that there are incredible things happening. I know, super technical word, right? Things, right? And there are these amazing capabilities of technology and disruptive technology that's available today. But the amount of budgetary dollars that it takes to get access to some of these things is incredible, right? And also, you're struggling on a day-to-day basis with just making sure that people have access to the technology that they need to have access to. And so I really like what Colleen had to say there in terms of creating the structure. And the other thing I would say, just to piggyback off of that, is wherever you are as an organization is where you are, right? Take purposeful steps forward, right? Using that 3P model that Colleen said there is fantastic. It's a great way to go about it. I'll approach it from a cybersecurity realm and just simply, because that's the bulk of what I work on in engineering. I would say, do you have a couple basic things in place, right? Multi-factor authentication, all right? If you don't, do it yesterday, right? Okay, so that's A1A. All right. Then after that is, do you have a business continuity plan and do you have an incident response plan? All the other stuff then comes later, right? But those are the things that I would say that you need to have in place. And if not, and again, I'll just say those, right? That you have that basic incident response and business continuity plan. The business continuity plan is one where you pull in the other people, right? What happens tomorrow if we can't email each other in the organization? Right. I would say that 75 to 80% of organizations, they have no idea what would happen at that point. So just know that. And then the final thing, like I just said there, is make sure that everything is multi-factor authenticated, including and especially third-party vendors, third-party actors from outside your organization. So with that, I'll hand it back over and look forward to the conversation today.
Thanks, Corey. All right, next up, we're going to hear from Joe.
Awesome, thank you. My name is Joe Smizer. I'm a senior Google Workspace engineer with Trafera, and I have been in technology almost 20 years, including about 10 years of experience working for a school district as a cybersecurity analyst and a Google Workspace administrator. I saw this stat earlier today, and I wanted to use it to shape our discussion. So from the dawn of civilization through the year 2003, humanity created 5 exabytes of information. That's 5 billion gigabytes of information. Today, in 2025, we create that same amount of data every 15 minutes. So every 15 minutes, as a society, we create 5 billion gigabytes of information. And it sounds like a huge number, and it is, but we see it on a local scale too. My school district has 4 to 5 million loggable events every single day. So the school district I came from, 4 to 5 million loggable events every single day. And they're collecting mountains of data on attendance, assessments, technology, and more. But what do we do with it? For a ton of that data, it ends up in a data graveyard. It's untouched, it's unused. I think it's time for schools to stop letting that data die. And the trend that I see and the trend that I think is needed is for schools and tech departments to leverage data analytics to make some informed decisions for their entire district. And to get started, I think there are a couple steps you can take today, both leveraging tools already included in Google Workspace, so you don't have to run out and get an expensive tool. The first is to visualize the data that you already have. And the best tool for that, if you use Google Workspace, is Looker Studio. What is it? It's a free data visualization tool that connects directly to the data that you already have, data in sheets and forms and databases if you need to get more complex. And it creates live automated dashboards with no coding required. So you can imagine a principal seeing a real-time attendance or disciplinary data or library usage information on a single dashboard so they can see trends before they become problems. And the same is true for tech directors or facilities directors or anybody like that. That's the power of visualization. And then from there, we can take a second step, supercharging that data with AI. So tools like Google AI Pro for Education, we can go into Gemini and ask simple questions like, all right, here's this data. Which bus routes have the most frequent late arrivals? And we can get instant sortable data right in a couple of clicks. And so again, just kind of wrapping up, use tools they already have to tackle this. So look at Looker Studio. You can integrate Gemini into Google Sheets, and then also look at things like Notebook LM to synthesize all that knowledge that's already in your district. Thank you.
Thanks, Joe. Love that fact to start out with too. Okay, next we're going to hear from Josh.
Awesome. Thanks for that, everyone. So my name is Josh Ratliff. I lead the education team at Trafera. I'm a former teacher, school principal by trade. And my insight is I think that there will be a emerging need to provide training and professional learning for people like instructional coaches and instructional leaders around our school district to help them understand the kinds of learning environments that we're seeing today. And by instructional leaders, I mean anybody who is observing instruction and providing feedback. So that's assistant principals, instructional coaches, technology coaches, anybody. For perspective, I took my principal's endorsement in 2012. And I can tell you that in 2012, we were not talking about one-to-one initiatives yet. We were certainly, the term generative AI didn't exist. And there were not these big STEM initiatives. There was some talk about digital citizenship, but certainly not in the context that we have it now. And the whole educational environment has shifted beneath our feet. And now, if you have people in your school district who are in their 40s or so, and they did their administration certificate around the same time that I did mine, look, the reality is we are observing and providing feedback on learning environments that we were not prepared to and that we may not even understand. And so now, as we're doing a pretty good job of providing professional learning to teachers who are charged with this mission, we should also put a huge effort in providing professional learning opportunities for our instructional leaders to help make sure that we're not out here just perpetuating mediocrity. that we know what excellence looks like, and we have the vocabulary to coach our learning environments toward excellence.
Awesome. I love that. Thank you, Josh.
You're welcome.
Okay, certainly not least, but last, we've got Michael, and then after that, we will transition into our pre-submitted questions. So go ahead, Michael.
Thank you, Jordan. And thanks to everybody else on the panel. I'm Michael Urban, and similar to Colleen, I have recently joined Trafera as a field CIO and CTO. So she's got the west of the Mississippi, and I've got the east. I'm not sure what that means, but we'll tackle it all. And a special thanks to Dr. Ratcliffe, Joe, and Corey, and Ben, who really help us engineer solutions for customers every day. So I've had the privilege of about 25 years in educational technology and running education SaaS providers, as well as student information, assessment platforms, and interoperable courseware, most recently running a very large charter school district. So I want to bring light to one or two things. And Colleen touched on this a little bit, but right now my big thought is really on data governance as it relates to your AI strategy. And strong governance ensures accountability and compliance. So I strongly urge you to establish, or if you have not already, but establish an AI oversight committee, and that should be a cross work group, personnel kind of group that maybe comes from IT, legal, data, instructional staff, instructional coaches, teachers, and administrators. And make sure that you're defining your AI usage policies. Most importantly, and Corey talked about this, but schedule routine, and I mean routine security and ethics audits of your AI systems and your cybersecurity. The other two things I want to bring light to is infrastructure as a service and device management as a service. And I think for a lot of districts and for school systems, that's a scary proposition because you feel like you're giving up control. And actually the opposite is the truth. So we're here to partner with you on that and expand the capabilities of your infrastructure team and leverage them so that they can focus on more strategic objectives rather than tactical daily objectives. And the same applies to, device as a service. So we think about big fleets for 8,000 students and 10,000 students, or, large, public entities where you have police and fire and rescue and other entities that are using devices. So again, I want to bring light to, infrastructure and device as a service. And then the last thing, very passionate about, is workforce development and integrating that into classrooms. And I had the opportunity to do that running a very large school system, making sure that students had practical schools, practical life skills, training and development that led to certificates and different levels of proficiency in addition to, adjudicating from that particular high school or institution. So anything we can do to support technology labs, technology innovation, and workforce development is something I'm really passionate about. So thanks for having me today.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Michael. And thank you to all of our panelists for kicking off this call with those perspectives. That was great. All right, like I mentioned at the beginning of the call, we did have an opportunity to take some pre-submitted questions when we registered for the webinar. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen, which will show those questions. And then we will tackle those first before we move into taking new questions. And I will just look for someone to confirm that they're seeing the Trafera Solve Today, Shape Tomorrow.
Got it.
Got it.
It's there? Perfect. Okay. Our first question is, as a teacher, what is the best way for me to prepare my students to be career ready once they graduate? specifically in terms of AI. And so for this one, I'm going to pass it off to Anna to start, but any panelist can also feel free to chime in if you like.
Yeah, absolutely. I love this question. This kind of relates back to what I was talking about earlier about, getting students prepared and how to appropriately use AI. But, in general, I think it's important to get them career ready by teaching them how to work with the AI and not around it. We need to be working on building their critical thinking, their creativity, their digital literacy, so that they know when to use the AI tools and really when to rely on their own judgment. So I think that you can break that down in a few different ways. I mean, I think first and foremost, you need to build AI literacy for students. You need to go the basics, teach appropriate prompt engineering, really make sure they're aware of data privacy, and bring in the discussion about bias and misinformation, what that looks like, how to navigate that, transparency, and the different ethical issues surrounding AI. But I think also it's really important that we model fluency as a teacher. We need to be transparent as educators, talk to them about how we're using AI in our class to help, create these lesson plans, how we use it to assess, how we use it to pivot and meet different challenges. By showing that transparency and talking about how it's being used, I think that they can develop a better understanding of what that looks like. And while doing that, I think it's so important to encourage curiosity with them as well. Let them play around with it. Let them take chances and risks and see what that looks like. But finally, I think it's super important that we prioritize just these transferable human skills. Colleen touched on this earlier as well. I mean, to make these kids AI ready, we need to really double down on what makes them human. And that goes back to the critical thinking, the problem solving, when to trust AI, when to not trust it, to question sources, to fact check, to spot bias. Using AI for creativity, but just to extend the imagination, not to do everything for you. And just really using it for different ways to collaborate and communicate. So I think ultimately the goal is to make them just confident and adaptable problem solvers, because I think AI is really going to be a part of every career. So really immersing them in the classroom is going to help prepare them for their future. Anybody else have anything to add to that?
Oh, you covered it well.
Well, thanks.
Awesome. Thank you, Anna. Yeah, I'll give it one more second to see if any other panelists want to join. Otherwise, we can move on to the next question. All right. The next question we received is, how do we get content supervisors to buy into the blended learning structures to increase student engagement and move away from direct instruction? So for this one, I'm going to pass it off to Josh to start.
Yeah.
And then, oh yeah, go ahead.
No, yeah. What?
All you, Dr. Radler.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you, this came from a viewer, Jeanette, and I hope you're on the call, Jeanette. I love this question. I love where your head's at for this. And what I would say is that if you have content supervisors or other instructional leaders around your district who are insisting on direct instruction, it's probably coming from a mentality where if they walk past a classroom and they don't see some adult at the front of the classroom standing and delivering content, then the assumption could be that they're not teaching. And if you've ever walked past a small group instruction classroom or some kind of collaborative learning environment, or in your case, you're talking about blended learning, sometimes you can walk past a classroom that's engaged in one of those learning models and it's a zoo. I mean, it looks insane. And so I think the assumption is from somebody who is not trained. I spoke about this earlier. From someone who is not trained to understand what's happening in that learning environment, it looks like chaos, and they want to put things back in order. And so that's why you will see sometimes content supervisors or other instructional leaders ask for what feels kind of like regressive teaching models. And so to address your question, what I would say is, let's start with number one. Let's start with common goals. Chances are they're not just trying to make you teach in some antiquated style. They're trying to establish some order, and so you can start with those kind of commonalities and say, no, look, I know it looks like a zoo in here, but we actually do have a structure. So start with those shared goals and make sure you have a clear understanding about what it is that they're trying to communicate within that learning environment, and find the commonalities there. The next thing I'll say is, like, if you want to position blended learning or small group instruction or whatever the case may be, a technology infused learning environment, if you're trying to position that, lead with evidence. Don't lead with your experience. Hey, look, this is what I think. Don't lead with your gut instinct. Lead with the evidence. And if you do 15 minutes of research, you're going to find that there's an indirect correlation between student engagement and discipline. When students are very highly engaged, discipline tends to be low. When they are disengaged, discipline tends to be high. The same can be true with learning outcomes. So when you're invited to the table to advocate for your learning model, lead with that evidence. The third thing I'll say is, don't try to do this by yourself. Invite more stakeholders to the table. Invite those content supervisors to the table and say, hey, let's design these learning models together. So that way it doesn't come across as like you against them, where you're trying to advocate for your thing and they're trying to advocate for theirs. Instead, we come alongside and try to do it together.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Josh. Does anyone else want to chime in on this one?
I would just say, we did it in the district I came from, and one of the key things was being outcome based. Like, how do we get to every student? How do we personalize learning? How do we meet them where they're at? And so starting with that outcome is direct instruction doesn't get there. That's everybody at the same time with the same modality, and that isn't effective. I mean, there is some effect size for direct instruction, so don't get me wrong there. But however, there's a place and time for that. And I think blended learning, if you lead with our outcome is to meet students where they are, and this enables the teacher to do that, then you figure out how it works in your environment. And so really focusing on that outcome is really important.
Yeah, and I'll add to what Dr. Ratliff and Colleen said. There is a direct correlation between engagement and outcomes, as well as attendance. Attendance is a big thing right now. Josh, you talked about the discipline piece of it, but blended learning and adaptive learning, as I would call it in terms of small group instruction, incredibly important. So lead with the research, lead with the facts as you go to the table and try and structure that engagement opportunity for students and move away from that model of there's a talking head in front of the classroom.
I love that, Michael. Yeah, I mean, we know that disengaged students don't come to school.
They don't. Yeah.
Yeah.
There's a direct research correlation between engagement and attendance. And again, to your point, spend 15 minutes and look that up. And you'll see that, right?
Yeah, and we won't have time to demo this, but one of the things that Anna loves to show is the deep research feature within Gemini. So if you're not a skilled researcher, I love research and I can put my nerd glasses on with the best of them, but nowadays, I mean, I go to that deep research mode in Gemini, and I just, you toggle that on. Am I saying that right, Anna? You just toggle that on in the bottom part of the chat box, and you say, I want deep research, and you say, hey, I'm advocating for blended learning in my district, and I need some talking points on its effectiveness, and boom, it's going to do that. And it'll give you not only great results, but it's going to give you the research base and peer-reviewed articles to support that.
Great. Love that. Thank you all for contributing to this question. All right. Our next one is, can you see AI weakening or diminishing the importance of software engineers, since various AI platforms can do the coding for us now? So I'm going to start with Michael on this one.
I love this question. Having spent over 2 decades in development operations and managing and leading amazing development teams of engineers and coders and data scientists, as we call them today, Yeah, here's my one-liner. AI is not going to replace DevOps developers, but it's fundamentally changing the role. Okay. And predominantly by automating repetitive tasks and increasing the demand for those same, individuals to focus on higher level strategic skills. Okay. And so DevOps professionals and coders who embrace AI and seek to upskill themselves either through their organization or independently, they're going to remain relevant, and they're going to become more valuable, right? So some of the key areas that are really being impacted and optimized by AI as it relates to DevOps is, just faster and cleaner deployments. I mean, we used to struggle, with, AI powered CI/CD pipelines now. We can detect risks, automate testing, and even initiate rollbacks. I mean, we used to have physical, rollbacks. I think one of the biggest impacted areas are predictive analytics and monitoring. It used to take several days to create a single BI report. That's not the case anymore. AI can analyze system metrics and logs and, detect anomalies in data, anticipate potential, trends and diagnose things. Again, I spoke about it earlier, infrastructure management, device management. Corey talked about it, enhanced security. AI can perform security checks and detect threats and monitor for policy compliance, which used to be more of a manual task. So I would say that, the consensus is that, AI is an enabler, not a direct replacement for DevOps and coding professionals. While roles that are focusedly kind of, on repetitive tool-based things, they may be at risk. But the strategic aspects of DevOps will still require human oversight and creativity, in my opinion, that AI cannot replicate.
Love that.
Thank you, Michael. Anyone else for this question?
Corey, chime in there. You've done this for 100 years.
It feels like it today too. I would say, I would echo what you say here or on that in terms of like that it's never going to replace. What I might say is that it may move people around organizations,
Yeah.
right? So I'll give you one concrete example, and that would be, calling out to Joe, who mentioned Looker Studio, working on a project right now where it's going to require allowing people to fill out a Google form that'll create a Looker Studio, custom Looker Studio for every person that fills out this Google form. Well, there's a little bit of basic coding that goes into that. That's something that AI can help me write. But you still, the person who's doing this particular architecting of whatever it may be or engineering is still going to have an understanding of how the systems connect to each other. So there's still a human in the middle of these processes, there's going to be, as we already know, there's massive disruption in just the writing of the coding language. So I would just echo what you said there and just say that still there's an element and a need for a human in the middle. It's just the roles will change.
Yeah, and I'll add to that by saying, in my opinion, to really thrive in what we call an AI integrated development services environment, developers need to adapt their skill sets and embrace a new way of working, right? Focus on higher value work, master some AI tools that can help you do that, develop, AI expertise, and really be that person with critical oversight. So even with AI generated code and recommendations, they're not always perfect, right? So be that person with critical oversight as it relates to the integration of AI and development.
Awesome. Thank you both so much. All right. Our next question that was pre-submitted is, with the increasing amount of embedded AI, how do we address making sure PII is protected? And for this one, we're going to start with Colleen.
I think this is, it's no different than any other tool that we use in any organization, and I can talk to K-12 specifically, is you always have to make sure it's protected. That AI just makes it more complicated. So how do we do that? And what tool we're using, understanding their privacy policies, how they use the data in the functionality, all of those different things. One of the things that I began with was, what are our data governance policies? Because the AI, depending on the tool you're using, will follow some of those policies. And if you don't have those in place, you can do a Google audit, you can do a Microsoft audit, you can work with the partners that you have to make sure that you are following good compliance and good policy prior to implementing tools. So it's really, really important to walk, not to run when you're looking at AI. And what is underlying? Where does it have access? What is the company's privacy policy? What are your policies? And once you start putting those in buckets and steps, and like we talked to before, the planning piece of it. The planning is very important. And I think the most important thing for this is to do your research, do your planning, understanding the tool, understanding what it's using, and then doing audits or doing examinations of what that data looks like and who has access to it. And it really is, AI just accelerated it. It's the same kind of thing that you're doing with website subscriptions, with apps, any other technology that you have in your system. So it's not something that is foreign or new, it's just another layer. And then the layer that really comes with AI is that particular model using your data to train a model or in any other manner. And that's really the most important question you should ask of an AI tool. But all of the things that you're doing for any other technology, apply that to AI, start with good practices, and you'll be in a good position.
Awesome. Thank you. And Anna, did you have anything to add to this one?
I did not. I think she handled that pretty well. No, I'm good.
Awesome. Okay.
Can I play moderator here on this, Jordan? Joe,
Of course.
Joe, could you speak to like utilizing your embedded or the tools that you're paying for, especially I'm thinking Google Admin Console for protecting PII, right? So the trust rules and some of those pieces. So a lot of people are paying for those things. So how do they best utilize those?
Yeah, I think a big part of that, again, Colleen mentioned auditing your environment. I think a big piece of that is just understanding the tools that you already have. And so inside Google Workspace, whether you have a free account or a paid license, there are going to be tools that help you with PII and handling that. So DLP rules, data loss prevention rules inside Google Workspace are available with both the free fundamentals plan as well as the paid editions. So making sure you have that set up, and that works with email messages, chat messages, drive files, all sorts of different services behind the scenes to make sure that you're secure. And then we can take that even farther with those paid licenses. So things like trust rules for drive sharing, like you mentioned, or DLP layers on top of Chrome OS devices with action rules and all the different security things that go into that. So yeah, just making sure that you're aware of all those different tools that are available to you, because as we do audits around the country, or as we speak in front of groups around the country, we're seeing time and time again that a lot of these basic tools aren't being utilized.
Great. Thank you so much for that perspective. One last call before I move on to the next question. All right.
Sorry to play moderator again on this one, Jordan. I thought maybe Ben might have something on Microsoft World for PII. Is there like a lot of people are on a Microsoft background or backbone? What do you think, Ben?
I personally haven't dealt with the AI portions of like Copilot all that much. I do know they have the same sort of compliance tools that Google and Gemini has. And you're right, honestly, a lot of people are already paying for those. If you've got Microsoft licensing, if you're using, Office products, SharePoint, all that, they have those tools and you're already paying for them. It's just a matter of getting them set up in a way that follows your policies.
Great. Thank you. All right, next question here. And this one will take the original question and expand a little bit beyond it, but it was one of the pre-submitted ones from our attendees here. So the question is, how do we convince teachers and staff to go from Windows laptops to Chromebook Plus laptops? So for this one, I will start with Josh.
Yeah, I volunteered for this one. I raised my hand. I think this is a cool question. I love this. This one comes from Jason. Jason's actually on the call. So Jason, I love where your head is at with this one. So what I'll say is that the decision to deploy Windows machines or Chrome machines to adults is a highly nuanced question that has to be answered at the local school district. And so there are people here on this call, Colleen, Corey, Michael, probably others, who have been in the seat that is required to make that decision. And there's a lot of nuance that goes into that. You got to think about, what your staff is used to, what kind of applications you have to run, what the pitchforks and fires that might erupt if you try to switch that, from one platform to another, especially when people are used to things. So, so that's what I'll say to begin with. But in case you're not familiar with what it is that Jason's asking about, Chromebook Plus is not Chromebooks. It is running Chrome, but it is a machine that has high-end specs. It has more hard drive space. It has a high-definition camera, and it has a processor that is capable of running, a high-end Windows machine or a high-end MacBook Pro. But you put those same specs in a Chromebook, and then you have a Ferrari. I mean, that thing is blazing fast. And so that's the machine that I pick up and use most days is my Chromebook Plus. And so what I would say is, like, once we kind of have an understanding of, what a Chromebook Plus is, I can tell you that a lot of tech directors will choose to do this because they can manage their district from one pane of glass, and they don't have to have Jamf running over here for their Windows machines, and then Intune and maybe something else for their Windows machines, and they can all run it all from the Chrome platform. So if that is something that you think your school district might be interested in, what I would say, if you're asking me to answer this question directly, is you got to test drive it. You need to put your hands on a Chromebook Plus and reach out to a company like Trafera or one of the OEMs who can help get you some of those Chromebooks, and then start with a pilot. We just facilitated a pilot initiative in New Jersey where they were making this transition, and it started with a small group, and we deployed some really nice Chromebook Plus machines to a small group of teachers, thought leaders around the district. And that we did that in partnership with Lenovo, and it was a great initiative. But I will say, though, that the decision to deploy Windows to adults is not uncommon. It's actually a quite common deployment. And for a lot of school districts, that's the best solution. We are more than happy to help school districts facilitate that choice as well. And so I don't know if maybe one of the former CTOs, or if Ben wants to chime in. I mean, Colleen, maybe did you deploy Windows to adult?
We did, and we had this, actually I had this conversation with the school districts just the other day, but I think you have to lead with the why, like understand the difference between a Windows laptop and a Chrome Plus, and what value is it going to bring? What are the needs of your staff? And without that, there's, we don't want to convince anybody. It's not about convincing either or. It's choosing the right tool for the right situation. And there's other considerations. You have security, budget, we can go on and on, training, the cost of moving things over from Windows and to Chromebook, you have some indirect costs. So it's really a larger conversation is, what are we trying to do? And is there a reason I'm switching? And is it a good enough reason to do the change management process? And if you can't answer those questions, then you shouldn't convince anybody. You
Right.
should just try to sit there. And it's not a vacuum. You need to involve teaching and learning. You need to involve your CTO, your CFO, or folks in those areas to really make the best decision for your school district. And you're absolutely right. There's no one answer. It's not an either or. It could be a yes and what is the best thing given your environment, your budget, and your staff and your talents.
I love that.
And I would add one more thing to Colleen and Josh, and it sounds like there's a little bit of energy and momentum around this decision from this question already. And so I would say in the intersection of this question is really about, piloting, as Josh talked about, and demonstrating what the use cases are and the why, as Colleen talked about. But then ensuring if you're going to make the transition that you have the right PD and change management in place, right? And the change management piece probably sits with your CIO or CTO, so we don't have too many blowups and non-usage cases. But the PD piece is critically important to this, to ensure teachers and administrators that you're going to be there for them during this transition and showing them, the elevation to the Chrome, or again, big fan of Windows, and we can help you with that as well.
Yeah, I know.
Awesome. Thank you. Anyone else want to contribute to this one?
I was just going to say, I know that Corey, deployed when he was at Richfield, deployed Windows to his adults, but then you were also considering Chromebook Plus for a moment. And
Yeah.
then decided to stay with Windows. Can you just walk us through that a little bit?
Yeah, and I trying to be cognizant of not taking too much mic time. So I would just say that, yes. So I've done it in a couple organizations. Actually, one actually happened and the other one didn't. And it's an exact, and the one that didn't happen is because we didn't do enough front end mindset change. It has since happened. That's many years ago since I've left that organization, and they are fully on Chrome now. But I had mentioned in the chat there, I mean, I think that comment there kind of just speaks to the fact that at Trafera, we have we have an educational team. I think Kristen's on this call right now. She's one of our primary leaders in that regard of starting first with the pilot, then doing mindset change at the same time as that pilot, doing comprehensive professional development for people within your organization. And then even if that doesn't get people there, the final thing that I'll say is we also have a partnership in place with a software company that provides app streaming, which is where you literally can run your Windows applications, your Adobe applications and beyond from a Chrome browser. So now you're talking, and we're talking not like a .x file type. We're talking the actual file type of these different partner applications from Adobe to Microsoft and so on. So just kind of know that if there's a will, there's a way, and we can help you get there. And I do want to mention, just for the sake of the reverse of this, we also are able to and can assist in if you're like, boy, we want to go full Windows. It's the big thing is, I would just say that in this day and age, with all the challenges that IT leaders have, the less operating systems you have to manage, the better. And I think we would all agree on that.
Great.
Amen to that.
Thank you so much. All right, I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing my screen now, as we have reached all of the pre-submitted questions, and we're coming up to just a couple minutes left on this webinar, so we can probably take a question or maybe two from the audience if there are any. Feel free to pop it in the chat if you like, or there's also a Q&A option in the meeting tools. And I would like to say, as people are kind of thinking, if they have a question, if something comes up later, or you want to dive a little deeper into something that has been discussed on this call, we are always happy to continue the conversation. We will be emailing this webinar all out to everyone next week and following up with ways to contact us and more information. So if you leave today and you think, oh, I should have asked this question, we're always here. I don't see any questions coming through. I'll ask the group to verify that no one else is seeing anything. All right. Well, with that, we will wrap it up then. And I just want to say thank you so much to our attendees for joining us and listening to our conversation. We loved having it. And a big thank you to our panelists. I know I definitely learned something, and it's great just to get this group together and start the great conversation around technology. So thank you so much, everyone.
Bye, everyone.
Happy Friday.